In this lesson, we'll take just a couple minutes to remind ourselves how we can start to change the rendering engine that's used inside of 3ds Max. Okay, so this is probably something that you've already had a chance to take a look at with the texturing lessons that were done earlier with Josh, but this is something that is going to be important for us to take note of as we start to get a little bit deeper into the rendering of our scenes. So within 3ds Max, we have the option to change which rendering engine is going to be used. Now by default, the scanline rendering engine is going to be used, and it is good for some situations, but as you start to get into scenes where you want a little bit more realism, a little bit more control, you'll probably want to be using Mental Ray as your rendering engine. So like I said, this is probably something you've already had a chance to take a look at, but I do want to make sure that we remember how to do this. So this is going to be found inside your render setup. Let's click on that, and you can see right now under the render setup that we are using NVIDIA Mental Ray as our rendering engine. Now to change this, what we can do is go to our Common tab. Let's scroll down all the way to the bottom, and let's open up this Assign Renderer rollout. Now if we click on this, we can switch this to a couple of different rendering engines. Now by default, whenever you start to make a new scene inside of 3ds Max and start to work, it will by default use the scanline renderer. So you can see that's been switched, and now up at the render setup it says default scanline renderer. Like I said, that is good for certain situations, or situations where maybe an absolute level of realism is not all that important. But like I said, for scenes like this where we want to start to get a little bit more realistic, have a little bit higher quality in our lighting and in our rendering, we'll probably want to switch this to Mental Ray. So once again, just switch the production, just click on that. We're going to switch this to Mental Ray, hit OK, and now we are going to be using Mental Ray from this point on. So for this, we're going to make sure that we do have that option enabled, that we are using Mental Ray, and then that'll give us a little bit higher quality render, a little bit higher quality shadow and shading, and a little bit more realistic indirect lighting effects. So now that we have that set up, we're ready to start taking a look at some of the shadow types in 3ds Max, and we'll start to do that in our next lesson.